What's going on, everyone? So welcome to my latest video. This is a video that I've been looking forward to do for quite some time, and that is my top 10 films that changed me. One of my fellow YouTubers I saw did a video like this, top 10 films that changed him, and to be quite honest, it was one of those situations where I said to myself, you know what, that's pretty cool. Like, that's a cool video to do because, when you actually think about it and when you internalize and think about what it means to be a film buff slash critic, there are going to be certain movies that might stand out where it's like, oh my goodness, I still remember, seeing that and how it changed how I looked at, this part of filmmaking, or emotionally this changed me. It's just a lot of things that just kind of made me like think about, childhood and just, also like growing up and everything, and becoming the film buff that I am today. So I wanted to do this list, and this is going to be my personal list. And what I'm going to do is my number 10 is going to be the latest, well, I shouldn't say latest, the earliest movie that changed me from recollection, of course. And then number one will be the most recent one. And because of, Facebook and Letterboxd, I can give you guys like a general idea on when I saw these movies, except for the number 10 and number 9 slot. Unfortunately, because I was so young, I don't remember when. I just know that it was a long time ago for my number 10, my number 9 slot. And then before I do all that, I will give you guys also honorable mentions of films that changed me, 5 in particular. But keep in mind, these films, there were many others that did change me. And again, this was a list that I've been working on for a long time because it's so difficult, because a lot of times it's like, oh my goodness, these several films changed me, it's a lot. So condensing it down to 10, it wasn't easy, but here we are. And I apologize for all this exposition. So guys, let's get started with the honorable mentions. So the honorable mentions, of course, I'm a physical media collector, so I will give you guys a visual presentation. My first honorable mention is The Prestige. This movie is excellent. I'll never forget when I saw this film. I saw this film because some random person at my high school recommended it in the gym locker. And I got it out from the library. I saw it on a Sunday, and not only did I love it, and I'll never forget just seeing it at 2 a.m. and just like, being like, oh my goodness, like that twist ending. Oh my goodness, there's 2 twists. And then I rewatched it the day after, and I've seen it many, many times since. I love this film. I've owned it on DVD, Blu-ray, and now 4K. I love this film. Next up is Zero Dark 30. In terms of an honorable mention, Zero Dark 30 really shook me. Just the themes and messages about torture and just kind of really challenging viewers to really understand that this world that we live in, it's very gray, and that, the moral conflict at the center stage was definitely something that wasn't an easy task in terms of what the director was trying to accomplish. And I think personally, Catherine Bigelow did a great job with the directing. 16-year-old Chad and 26-year-old Chad both love this film. 2 different reasons, but this definitely helped me in terms of just really understanding, I feel like, the morally gray world that we live in. So yeah, I love Zero Dark 30. Next up, we have The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Talk about gray morals. Holy cow. This movie changed me in terms of understanding that films don't necessarily just have to be a 3-act structure. This is a 5-act structure film. But not only that, years ago, I had this thing where like, movies with high sexual content, I'm probably not going to watch. And I remember The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I remember always seeing the trailer like in 2011, 2012, and just always being like, I'm not gonna watch the movie like ever. But at the same time, in 2015, I slowly started realizing that I'm a pretty big David Fincher fan, and as many of you know now, I'm a huge David Fincher fan. But I said to myself that I was only gonna watch like 10 minutes of this film. I kid you not, I ended up watching an hour and a half of it. I almost was late for work. I'll never forget watching this film for the first time. And as soon as I got done from work, I finished watching this film, and I've seen it many, many times since. I love this film. That ending is just like a gut punch, and it just, again, similar to Zero Dark 30, it's a morally challenging film, and I think that is what really kind of hit home for me. The fact that you're dealing with all these characters, their morals, and how there's a lot of situations that they're put in that aren't easy, and there's no right or wrong answer. And I think that that's something I especially, was in touch with. And then also, again, just like, understanding that film is an art form. And in an art form, there are going to be things that you're going to witness in films such as this that aren't an easy watch, but at the same time, it's a necessity to watch because it's like, oh my goodness, like this is just, it's crazy, it's insanity. But I love The Girl Drank It too. It's a masterpiece in my opinion. Next honorable mention, we have $1 Million Baby. Again, similar to Zero Dark 30 and similar to The Girl Drank It too. $1 Million Baby was a moral gut punch to me. My goodness, I'll never forget watching this film for the first time. I genuinely speaking think that not only was it the fact that it challenged my morals, but it also just really made me question. Not going to spoil the third act, but it really made me question as to what I would do in the situation. And that was something that really just kind of hit me, man. Like, I think this was probably the first time where I actually wanted to cry after watching a film. It brought an emotional response to me that I just thought was so effective. And to this day, like, as of filming this video, I haven't seen this film in nearly 3 years. I love it. I think it's a masterpiece. But it's just like anytime I think about it, I'm like, oh my goodness, like it's such a challenging film. And that's why I love it. I think that it is a film that not only works as a sports film, but just like a drama. It's so good. If you haven't done so, definitely watch this. And then my last honorable mention, being John Malkovich. This, along with The Grand Budapest Hotel, showcased to me that comedy doesn't necessarily just have to be a stupid studio movie that is just like a schlocked together script where, its main focus is the acting and that is what's supposed to elevate the content. No. Being John Malkovich showcases that, hey, this is a smart script. It's very weird, and it's willing to do so at your expense. And it's got great performances. It's very, very strange, as I mentioned. But it also was the first film, I think, that when I watched it, I remember pausing it halfway, and I said to myself, I genuinely have no idea how this film was going to end. It is one of the most unpredictable films I've seen, and I absolutely love showing this film to people to see their reactions. Because let me tell you, showing this film to people that have no clue what it's about, including myself, when I saw this for the first time, I didn't know what it was about. It's a wild ride, and it has to be taken. But yeah, that's my last honorable mention. So now, guys, let's get started with number 10 to 1. My number 10 is 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. How this film changed me, it is the first film, from my recollection at least, that at such a young age really captivated my imagination. Like, I remember growing up, I was, watching The Prince of Egypt and everything, and I liked that film, and I still do. But I'll never forget just being over at my mom's house and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea getting put in, and I was like, I wasn't really interested in watching it, but I couldn't help it while watching it just be really fascinated by everything that was happening. And by the end, I was just in love, and I rewatched 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea so many times on VHS, DVD many times. It was just a film that, honestly, the main character, Ned Land, played by Kirk Douglas, he was someone that I dressed up as often growing up. It's just a film that really captivated my imagination. And not only that, was probably the first film that I was obsessed with. And I gotta say, this is a film that I really dig. And I thought maybe it wouldn't, hold up, under scrutiny of an adult. But I will say that I did rewatch this film in 2016, and I quite liked it. Now, I do need to rewatch it again, but I'm waiting for it to come out on Blu-ray. That's why I don't have a physical copy to show you guys. I did get rid of my DVD years ago, but I thought that would come out on Blu-ray. But here we are, 2023, and it still hasn't come out. But yeah, this is a film that I greatly admire and respect for just captivating my imagination at such a young age. That's why it's my number 10. Next up, my number 9. This one also captivated my imagination at a young age, and that is Raiders of the Lost Ark. So Raiders of the Lost Ark, it was like the end of elementary school was when I first watched this film. And I gotta say, I was both intrigued by it, but also kind of terrified by it. No spoilers, because that's not my thing. But the ending of the movie, I thought, really kind of creeped me out, but in a good way. But not only that, I just was also just so surprised that it was a film that was PG, but like it was so violent, it's kind of crazy, but it makes sense because the PG-13 rating wasn't implemented at the time of Raiders of the Lost Ark. But similar to 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, it's just a young Chad was watching that and was so fascinated by it and would just rewatch it multiple times. Now, keep in mind, I didn't really understand the filmmaking aspects, but I do remember not only watching the film many times, but I would also watch the behind the scenes and just really kind of seeing like the makeup and everything that they would go about with how to make the stunts and everything. And I still remember also at Disney World watching the stunt show. Just again, it's a film franchise that does bring about a lot of memories. But Raiders of the Lost Ark was the only one growing up that I was allowed to watch. So it is the one that I went to a lot. And I love this film. And I'm so glad that it really kind of pushed me to become the movie buff that I am today. But yeah, that's my number 9. Next up, my number 8 is Tron Legacy. So this is the film that I am just going to say right now. This is the film that really changed things. I will never forget watching Tron Legacy. I just wanted to see it based on the trailer. Like, it looks really cool, like, visually. But I will never forget about, 5 minutes into this film, just seeing, hearing narration from Jeff Bridges. The score is just swelling in. The camera going over the water. And I was like, holy cow. But it gets even better. Then we see the lead character on a motorcycle and the camera's following the motorcycle. And that shot is ingrained in my mind because that was when I started to actually notice cinematography. That was when I was like, oh my goodness. It hit me, man. It hit me. And same with the score. Because before this film, like, don't get me wrong, I guess you could say, like, I would, kind of tune it out. But I couldn't tune out the score of Tron Legacy. Like, it actually was something that I was like, this is a great score. So for those two things alone, I really have to thank Joseph Kosinski for Tron Legacy. Because it was a game changer, man. Like, for me personally as a viewer. Like, again, cinematography, Tron Legacy still holds up. It's not a great film the way I used to think. But it is a film that I greatly enjoy. And then watching it, I can't help but just look at it and say, yep, this is what changed it all. So yeah, that's my number 8. Next up, my number 7 is True Grit, 2010. So this film is the first PG-13 I saw in theaters. That's right. Prior to January 2011 was when I saw this. I hadn't seen any PG-13s in theaters. And I'll never forget seeing this film with my best friend. And we both loved it. But the thing about this film that really kind of struck me was the sound design. I never noticed really before, like I mentioned about the score and the cinematography of Tron Legacy, but I never noticed like sound effects. You know what I'm saying? Like I would hear gunfire in like older films and I wouldn't mind it. It would be like, yeah, whatever. But listening to the gun sound effects in this particular film combined with like the oomph, it just really was something I recognized. And I was like, wow, this is interesting. Especially the scene with Ned Pepper when he shoots the gun and we see a wide angle shot. And at first, I'll never forget seeing like the gunshot going off, but not hearing the sound for like a couple seconds. And I was like, why is that? And my friend John, who's really into guns, was like, well, when you fire a gun, it takes a couple seconds often before you can hear the sound effect if you're far away. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like, it was just a little thing like that just kind of was like, oh, wow. I just really started paying attention to sound effects because of this film. Not only that, I feel like this was also the film that really kind of made me say, holy cow, acting, man. Like this was a great introduction to like acting, sound effects. It's a great film overall. I still love this film, but yeah, sound effects. I also forgot to mention that I saw in January 2011. Tron Legacy I saw in December of 2010. So as you can see, 2 Jeff Bridges movies kind of changed me like a month apart. So but yes, that was my number 7. Next up, my number 6 is Contagion. Yeah, so this film, how do I say this? This film I saw in January of 2012 because I wasn't allowed to see it in theaters. Unfortunately, despite being really excited to see this film, I had to wait. I saw this film over a friend's house, and watching it with friends, it changed me in that, how do I put this? It changed me in that I became a germaphobe. I'm not going to lie. Just the way that the shots showcased, people touching their hands, their face, and then, touching doors, and then, seeing other people touch that same door and everything, and just seeing how a virus can spread. I started washing my hands right away, like even more. It really struck a nerve, man. And even watching Contagion today, especially with, COVID-19 and everything, it just made it like, oh, see, this kind of foreshadowed the events to come. But it was like a preparation guide, if you will, for myself, because if I hadn't seen this film, I really don't know if I would be the germaphobe that I am today. I genuinely speaking do not know, but I have to thank this film. Although a lot of my friends and family will probably say that they wish I didn't see this film because, like I said, I don't know if I would be the germaphobe that I am today. But holy cow, Steven Soderbergh, great job with this film. And that's my number 6. So next up, my number 5 is Skyfall. So Skyfall, this is a film that really changed my perspective on action filmmaking, because I was someone that really dug the Transformers films, man. Like, I really liked them as a teenager. I liked the Jason Bourne films, and all those films were PG-13, herky-jerky kind of action sequences where you can barely tell what's going on. Now, I will say, and I will defend, the Jason Bourne films, the trilogy, I should say. I will defend those films because they do hold up. But the thing was this. I only knew that during action scenes, you can't really tell what's going on because you're supposed to be in the perspective of these characters. Okay, that makes sense. But watching Skyfall, it changed me in that I was watching a film where I could tell 100% what was going on. And not only could I tell 100% what was going on, but it was so cleanly staged. It felt so amazing. Like, there were so many wide angle shots. It's beautiful. Like, the color grading in this film is just immaculate. But more importantly, I was like, oh my goodness, there's a long take. Like, when you see the villain for the first time, it's a long take. Like, I was like, oh my goodness, the camera's still rolling. Like, you would think that there'd be like a couple shots here and there. Like, no, it's just watching him come into frame. Like, it just blew my mind as a 16-year-old. And the other thing about this film was that watching it, I said to myself, yeah, this is kind of like The Dark Knight pretty much, except the like British version. But the thing is this, it also kind of gave me an appreciation that you can do something similar to another film, but as long as you make it your own, you're okay. You're A-okay. So this film, again, it just changed my perspective on action filmmaking and understanding that not all action films have to have herky-jerky kind of camera work. They can, in fact, actually be cleanly staged and still be very intense. I love Skyfall, and that's why it is my number 5. Next up, my number 4. Number 4 is Lincoln. If I really wanted to be here all night, I would explain to you guys the many different ways that Lincoln changed my life. No joke. It really changed my life. This was a film that I saw it a couple weeks after Skyfall, which I forgot to mention. Skyfall I saw in November 2012. This I saw at the end of November 2012. And I did see it a second time in theaters, and I've seen it many times since. But how this film changed me was I really started noticing the cinematography and how symbolic it can be. You know what I'm saying? Like, not spoiling the film, but I would notice that the film was very dark in terms of like the lighting, the color grading, and then when there's a certain event that happens towards the end, that is when all of a sudden the lighting became, actually brightly lit. You had the colors actually be very colorful and not very drab. So just noticing that symbolism, noticing all these different long takes, especially when Daniel Day-Lewis would give a performance of a lifetime. This was the film that I saw Daniel Day-Lewis and I was just like, this is an amazing performance and I need to see more performances of this actor. He is incredible. Instantly, I knew this is my favorite actor. No joke. I didn't even see There Will Be Blood at this point. But watching this film changed me in that. And then also, politics and history. I actually became really invested and intrigued by both aspects. Like, don't get me wrong, history I was kind of interested in before. But the thing was this. I was interested in history from other countries. I wasn't really interested in American history, if you will. But after watching this film, I became really interested in that. And then also the politics and how it works and everything and how things can change, but also not change over the course of time, really kind of sparked my interest. And also, watching this film in a theater that was full of people that were all like 50 and up really kind of gave me perspective as a 16-year-old that, you don't have to necessarily see the, the films that other people are talking about. You can actually watch films that like older people are watching, and try to really actually study film. And that's the thing. This film I can study hours on it. I really was changed by this film. I love Lincoln, and that's why it's my number 4. Next up, my number 3 is Prisoners. So Prisoners, similar to some of the other films I mentioned, such as Million Dollar Baby, The Girl with Dragon Tattoo, Zero Dark 30, this film changed me in terms of just really kind of morally questioning me with what I believe, and those beliefs and how they can be kind of strained, especially when you're being challenged, like the lead character in this film, and the other characters too, for that matter. But the thing is this: all those other films I mentioned, they challenged me morally, but this is the film that really kind of did so in a way that I've never seen before, and to this day has never happened before. I saw this film, and I didn't see a film after this for a whole week. And the reason being is just because I wanted this film to soak in. Like, I didn't want any other films to be in my memory. I just wanted this film to be in my memory. Just so that way I could think it over. Think about all the different things that happen. The scenarios. Something like that doesn't happen. I haven't had that happen since this film. This film really shook me. And I will never forget watching this film with one of my best friends and us finishing this at like 3 a.m. and just both of us talking about it. Just talking about it. Even despite being really tired, because of how late it was. We were talking about it. We were just really kind of discussing about how it was something that we don't know what we would do. It's a great, great conversation starter. And I think that it's a film that if you're watching it with someone, I think that's especially the way to go because, man, it is a great conversation starter. I love Prisoners, and that's why it's my number 3. Oh, I also forgot to mention, I saw Prisoners at the end of December. It was like December 29th of 2013. Next up, my number 2 is Blade Runner. So Blade Runner I saw in January of 2014. This was a film that it changed me in that I really started to understand that film isn't necessarily just a one-time watch. And by that, I mean that, don't get me wrong, before this film, I did rewatch many, many films. But the thing is this, I would rewatch it because the first time I watched a film, I would love it. Blade Runner was different. Blade Runner was a film that I saw, and I appreciated it, but I thought it was way too slow. But I just couldn't get the imagery out of my head, especially with the ending, the tears in the rain, like that. That scene really struck a chord with me emotionally. So I remember just seeing this, like, I think it was like a month or two after, like rewatching it. And that's when it clicked with me that this is a great film. But again, it's a film that when I saw the first time in January 2014, I didn't exactly love it. It was just a film that I more respected than anything. That was just it. So again, this is the film that kind of changed that, where just because you don't necessarily love a film the first time doesn't mean you can't think about it, and really marinate, and then you rewatch it and it's like, oh, it clicks. Now I love it. Some films are like that, man. It's just like friends. Sometimes you meet a friend and you're like, okay, you hit it off right away. Other times it takes a while to really kind of be on the same page with a friend, and then that's when it clicks, and then that's when you become friends with the person. Same thing with Blade Runner. That's my friend. It takes a little bit. But I'm glad that it taught me the lesson about rewatchability value and how, rewatching a film to appreciate it is sometimes a necessity. But yeah, it's my number 2. Next up, my number 1, the film that I look at as really, really changed everything in terms of Chad as an adult. My number 1 is Mulholland Drive. So Mulholland Drive I saw for the first time in December of 2014, and there is a funny story about this film. So prior to Mulholland Drive, I had seen Elephant Man, but I didn't know it was a David Lynch film because I didn't know who David Lynch was. That is until I went to college. My professor, shout out to Mr. Vendita, he was a teacher that I had for composition. And in class, first day of class, I'll never forget, he had us write down some movies that we're interested in, like write 2 or 3. And me being me, I of course wrote down a bunch. So he saw all the bunch that I wrote down. He was like, oh, these are really good movies. And so right away, he knew that I was a movie buff. And after class, we would, talk about movies and everything, which was really cool. And he mentioned Mulholland Drive. He was like, oh, you seen Mulholland Drive? And I was like, no, I haven't seen Mulholland Drive. I don't even know what that is. And he was like, "Oh, you have to watch Mulholland Drive." And I was like, "Okay, I mean, I'll watch it." And he was like, "Yeah, like, you've seen David Lynch's other work, right?" And I was like, I don't know who David Lynch is." So he said, "Yeah, you need to right away see it." So I was like, "Okay, fine, I'll watch it." So I made the bright decision of watching Mulholland Drive for the first time the day before a test. So yeah, I would not recommend you do that because this film really struck a chord with me. Watching this changed me because prior to Mulholland Drive, I would watch films. I'm not gonna lie, I would watch a film and I'd be like, "Oh, plot hole," like, "Oh, the story, like, this doesn't make sense." Not understanding that film is subjective and that, a lot of times because it's visual storytelling, it's a visual medium after all, there are things that you kind of have to connect the dots. So sometimes I would look at something and I would take it quite literally, not understanding that you have to interpret that scene. Um, Again, something I should have known, but I didn't. However, David Lynch's Mulholland Drive changed that because watching it, I was able to follow along, and I thought that it was quite good for the first like 2/3. But then the third act happens, and I had no idea what had happened, but I knew I was experiencing something great because I found myself so emotionally invested with what was happening, despite not knowing what was going on in that third act. So I'll never forget the next day before the test. I was like, "Mr. Finito, like, what was that third act about?" Like, and he was like, "All right, after class, we'll talk. Like, we have to take a test." I was like, "Oh gosh," I'm like, "I'm not going to do well at this test." I actually did well at the test. But again, even taking the test, I couldn't help but think about David Lynch's Mulholland Drive. And here's the thing. This film made me realize that a film is also about how you feel. How does it make you feel? In addition to also the filmmaking, the plotting, the story, and everything. How does it make you feel? Does it garner emotion or does it not? David Lynch's films oftentimes garner an emotional reaction from me, but none quite like Mulholland Drive every single time that I watch this film. It makes me really, really just question everything in the best of ways. I'm saying that because, again, I look at my taste in terms of films and I see what it was before Mulholland Drive, and then I look at it after. Mulholland Drive also made me more accepting of weird films. You know what I'm saying? Like, Being John Malkovich, I would argue, is a film I saw a couple months prior to Mulholland Drive, and that really kind of sparked my interest in weird films. But I would say Mulholland Drive kind of solidified it that I don't just want safe movies. I want films that are actually risky. And Mulholland Drive definitely fits that bill. It was a film that I can see why some people might not like it, I suppose. But it's a film that if you are interested in film, it can change your life possibly. I know it did for me. I love this film, man. I really do. And I go back and forth between this being my favorite film of all time and American Beauty. I'm not going to lie. I love American Beauty, but I get to the point where Mulholland Drive might actually take that number one slot. But yeah, I would highly recommend Mulholland Drive. Just check it out, man. It's a great film. And as you can see, it really kind of hit me, man. But yeah, guys. So those are the top 10 films that changed me personally, and the honorable mentions. I want to hear your guys' thoughts though on the movies that changed you personally as a viewer. You guys can give me 5, 10, whatever the case may be. Let me know in the comment section below the films that changed you. And guys, thank you very much for watching. I appreciate your support, and don't forget the subscription, notification bell, follow me on Letterboxd, and I will catch you guys later.